Ahoy, class. I'm here to tell you a few words about your upcoming assignment, writing an essay known as an ode. Now, what is an ode? ODE. It's a good word to spell in Scrabble because it's only 3 letters. Traditionally, an ode is a poetic form, or not so much a form, but a mode where the poet is really just praising something that they cherish or adore. A very famous one is Keats's Ode to a Grecian Urn, where he's talking about a vase or a vase, and he's associating with all these other things. And in your student models, you'll find the piece on the broken speed opener is kind of like that. It starts with the speed opener, just a bottle opener, but it opens up into all these associations. You are basically taking the spirit of the ode from poetry, but just doing it in an essay form with sentences and paragraphs. No rhyming required. Now, I just got back from a dog walk, and that's a place where I like to get ideas. But for you, it could be driving in your car. I've recently found that I really enjoy in these times driving around and listening to music in the car, because it's one of the few activities that really hasn't been diminished. You know, when I go visit my friends, we have to stand, whatever, feet apart. And other activities, I have to wear a mask or whatever the thing is. But driving around in the car and listening to music is one of the few activities where it's still pretty much the same, except for that little, person on the shoulder reminding me of the times we're in. Now, the good thing is, this is a place, an essay, for you to really talk about something you love. So it's kind of a nice little oasis in our current situation. Now, I'm writing this on the back of a box for, see the front, frozen Indian food from Trader Joe's. I get a small percentage anytime I mention Trader Joe's in this piece. But seriously, the frozen Indian food from Trader Joe's is quite good. I don't know if I'd quite write an essay about it. However, the Indian restaurants on First Avenue in New York, at least the way they used to be, that I could write an ode about, because there were these Indian restaurants that were fairly inexpensive, affordable, but just amazing places with all these ceilings, with all these ribbons and colors and everything. Just amazing spaces to hang out in. It was like you had gone into the belly of a whale that had just eaten a bunch of confetti, and the food was good. And did I mention it was cheap? Not that I'm a cheap date, but if you were to write Ode to a Cheap Date, that would be a cool ode. Now, let's put a pin in that. Normally when I do this assignment with a class, I first get them to list out some of their favorite foods. I get them to list out some food or drink. I get them to list out some of their favorite activities, like water skiing or spelunking. And then I get them to list a favorite animal, whether it's an actual pet they had or their spirit animal, the koala. So, speaking of animals, pets are very much fair game for this ode. Remember, it can't be an ode to a person, and it can't be an ode to your phone. A person can show up in the piece, your phone can show up in the piece, but it's not going to be called an ode to grandma, right? If you call it ode to person, I'm not going to read it. And the simple reason for that is because you all have some amazing grandparents. They're some of the best people in the world, and that's awesome. But if I allowed people, I would get all papers that are like ode to grandma. So by eliminating people, we get a lot bigger variety. Now, going back to beagles, I've had The beagle I have now, Sissy Belle. She's the third beagle I've had, and they've all been females. We call them feagles, female beagles. I didn't realize until having a beagle that a lot of the behavior of Snoopy in the Peanuts cartoon, Snoopy, of course, the world's most famous beagle, is not just like dog behavior, but very specifically beagle behavior. The piece that you have as a professional model about the state dog, the Catahoula, it is an ode to the entire type of dog. But I've read some great papers that students have written over the years that have been specifically an ode to specific pets. Could be a dog, could be a ode for me, it would be to my beloved Mr. Feathers, Lovebird, R.I.P. Or I've even had odes to rabbits. Those are all things you can do. Snoopy was the world's most famous beagle, and my beagle in the corner is annoying me. In the Peanuts cartoon, one famous thing that happened was, well, a lot of things, but Lucy would, pull the ball out every time Charlie Brown tried to kick the field goal. And another thing that would happen to Charlie Brown, if you don't know who these cartoon characters are, please ask your parents or auntie. Charlie Brown, when he went trick-or-treating, other kids in the neighborhood come home, spread it out on the bed, bag of candy, let's see what I got. What did Charlie Brown get? Pause, take your guess. The answer is he got a bag of rocks. Now, that's interesting because it means the parents on the block, they had like one bowl of candy for most of the kids, and then, okay, here comes Charlie Brown, get the bag of rocks. A bowl of rocks, just for Charlie Brown. Point being, here's a fancy term I don't want you to remember, but I do want you to remember the idea. The fancy term is objective correlative. Okay, you're not remembering it? Good. But what it just means is the object correlates to larger things, right? So in the case of the bag of rocks for Halloween, just by that one little scene, we know that Charlie Brown is kind of a hard luck guy, right? Bag of rocks tells us Charlie Brown is not the captain of the football team at the school. In the same way, a lot of your pieces can just start with one thing that associates into many other things, right? It could be just one of your favorite foods, activities. I was thinking about on the walk, it's weird because right around the block here, I live in Gentilly, there's a restaurant called Fiorella's that is just like New Orleans food, but it's very good. And it's so great. I'm so happy that it's so close to my house and that it's still doing takeout even in these times. The chef of Fiorella's is somebody I went to high school with, right? So if you remember when you did your little cluster diagrams a long time ago in Miss McGillicuddy's class, at the center of this, I could put Fiorella's. My piece could be called Ode to Fiorella's. I could spin off at some point and talk about how I went to high school with the chef. With that chef, I think I went on my first spring break. It's like get in the van, high school. This seems kind of weird, but a long time ago I did these one-piece bathing suits for men, like with big stripes, and like 4 or 5 of us guys had these bathing suits with big red and white stripe one-piece type things, old-fashioned style. For some reason, a lot of the other guys in Florida did not think this was cool and wanted to beat us up. It didn't happen. But Fiorella's, chef of Fiorella's, had a van, went to my first spring break. The person that made those one-piece bathing suits, special order, was, of course, you guessed it, the mother of the first person in the world that I ever kissed. So we're getting to a lot of associations, right? And you can do that. The Ode to the Speed Opener, if you look at that student model, really does that. You can also just more extensively describe the activity or the thing in all its glory. The Ode to Billiards kind of does that. And my piece about the swim raft kind of just really describes why that type of raft is superior to the ones they used to have. It could be simpler. Coffee. Read some great odes to coffee. One cool thing about Gentilly is sometimes the air in the neighborhood smells like coffee. It's like Willy Wonka, but instead of chocolate, coffee air. That's awesome. You know, it could be an ode to Cabbage Ball. It could be an ode to all the places you've been, either other states, other countries. I could certainly, every other country I've ever been to is now my favorite country. I could write an ode to all those places. Or it could be like places that are wonderful in the city. I think somebody mentioned the Fly, which is that park that you sometimes call by its full name, but cooler, older people just called it the Fly. We're talking about the park behind the zoo on the river uptown that used to have a ferry that went right to Westwego. I've been told that's before even my time. The Riverboat President used to have concerts on it that while it was going up and down the river. Those are just places in New Orleans, but you know others that are special to you that I don't know, right? You could write an ode to one room. This room I'm standing in, we call the cowboy room because it's the room of my house that we didn't do this, came like this. The ceiling is this parquet ceiling, and you have these wood walls. This is very much more typical of something you would see out west, like in Reno, Nevada, or Lake Tahoe. More so than New Orleans, so it's unusual. But it's like a really cool room to be in because it's all wood. It's like being in a treehouse without the tree. So you've got a special place, you've got a special pet, you've got your favorite food, favorite activity. Any of those things are fair game, as long as it's not called Ode to Person, Ode to My iPhone. And you just need to find some associations that go with the thing. And as you read your pro models and your student papers, you should get a lot of ideas, and I'll be giving you feedback as well to set you on your journey. All right, here's an ode to writing your first graded essay. See you soon.